So is anyone going to listen to this?
I mean, I'm going to ask my wife too.
Yeah. My kids are going to subscribe.
That is, I mean, if I get my kids to subscribe too, we're up to 5 now.
That's right.
So kids, go ahead and brush your teeth and make your bed.
Listen to your podcast.
Listen to your podcast, and then it's time to go to sleep.
I like it.
Should I sing a lullaby?
No, we got the theme music.
You are listening to The Soapbox. I'm Paul.
And I'm Eric.
This all started out with a list. What's that all about?
So I've compiled a list over the years of things that just bother me, things that grind my gears. And I shared that list with you.
And I thought, you know what? That would make interesting conversation. Sometimes I'm going to want to agree with you, and it's just going to be something we talk about. Other times, though, I'm going to want to steel man the opposite position because I think that's just interesting conversation.
Yeah, and keep in mind, I'm always right, but Paul's just a really good debater.
Hey. We have a topic and a half. This one, I think, could get a little bit personal, a little bit political even, but I don't shy away from things that offend people because I don't like people. So,
right
there.
And nobody listens to this, so there.
So this is a safe space. What if they cancel our podcast?
Oh, no.
It'll be just like yesterday when nobody listened to it.
Right. Okay.
All right. So the topic, let's cue it up here. There are a couple of descriptive adjectives floating around there that people don't seem to understand the difference between.
Yep.
Atheist and agnostic.
Yes.
So why does this grind your gears? What's up with that?
Well, this one is very, very often misused. And I'll even dare say when I first heard the term agnostic growing up as a kid, it was pitched to me as kind of the in-between. So you're a theist, believe in a God. You're an atheist, you don't believe in a God. Or you're agnostic, and you're right in the middle.
So would agnostic sort of function as the predecessor to what's popular now, saying I'm spiritual but not religious?
Yeah, I think that's one avenue. But I think a bigger place where I think it lands, and somewhat ironic because it's right, is the I don't know. Like, you know, he believes in a God, he doesn't believe in God. I just don't know. And for some reason, people think that there is a space to stand between belief in a God and a disbelief in a God, or the rejection of a belief, right?
So there's sort of a spectrum of belief, and this is just to describe the space between the two endpoints of that spectrum.
I think the argument is that they invent a spectrum. But I really, when you're talking about theism, which is the root of atheist, right? We're really just talking about the belief. And in kind of computer terms, it's binary. It's a yes or a no. You know, do you believe in the tooth fairy?
Who are you? I'm the tooth fairy. Oh, yeah.
You do or you don't. You were a kid, presumably you did. I got the money, right? Once you realized mom and dad were doing it, you rejected that belief. So, I mean, there's not and I know religion's a lot more complicated and we've made it different, but I think the important thing that we need to point out here is when we're talking about theism, we're really talking about a belief in a God or a deity or whatever. And the putting the A on it is just the rejection of that.
So a lot of Christians probably, if they were to sit down and really think about their faith, and I'm going to come at it from a Christian perspective because that's my belief system and that's my background, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. But I think a lot of Christians would be nominal enough that they would be theists. They're going to just say, I'm going to make a claim based upon belief and personal experience and maybe study and meditation and prayer, if they're even that deep. But I think some of them just like the idea. But then I think there's probably another layer to that, right? Because you have Christians who are making a claim, and they're saying it's a faith-based claim. And faith, by its nature, requires a belief in the absence of physical evidence.
Sure. Yes.
So would you say then that agnosticism can actually be a component of somebody who has faith? Can you be a Christian agnostic?
Well, okay, so now I think it's important for us to kind of define or pick apart the word agnostic. Now we're talking about Gnosticism. Gnosticism is knowledge. So it's if you know something or not. So agnostic is someone that doesn't know. And if we're talking about religion, a Christian who's agnostic Christian, agnostic theist would be someone who believes in a God, but doesn't know if there is a God or not.
Okay, so probably agnostic Christian is bad framing of faith.
Yeah, probably bad framing of faith, but good framing of kind of maybe that spiritual person you'd mentioned.
Okay,
someone who definitely feels like there's something out there, but they don't know for sure. And this may be someone who doesn't really go to church or follow scripture or that. But
so this might be the person that's on that spiritual journey. Maybe they're looking at Buddhism. Maybe they're looking at Islam. Maybe they're looking at some other belief structures to try to find something that explains the world in a way that they feel it and understand it.
Yeah.
But they don't have a belief claim that they can lay hold to.
Yeah. And this is where, and I've taken this from others and other graphics and things. This is where you really have that a two-dimensional piece here, or you can have the X and Y axis, let's say. On one axis, it's Gnosticism, so knowledge, and then the other one is theism. So, and this is where people get to kind of play, pick the square, right? You can be, as we said, a Gnostic theist, and that would be like a very devout, I believe in a God, I know there's a God, feel it in my heart, all that, and that is a very strong theist. And then on the other side, you could have that Gnostic atheist, who's that very militant atheist that doesn't believe in a God, rejects all gods, and knows it 100%. That's a strong atheist. Now we're kind of diving into Dawkins scale.
I was just about to ask if you were going to invoke the Dawkins scale. So the Dawkins scale, let me see if I can recount it, and then you can correct me here. But it's a 1 to 7 scale. Mm-hmm. 1 being an absolute atheist, and 7 or
that's the other way, I think.
Okay, other way. So 1 being an absolute theist, you believe in God. There's no possibility God doesn't exist. Anybody that disagrees is just patently wrong. And then the 7 is there is no God. You're an idiot for thinking it. There's absolutely no room for ambiguity.
Right.
And Dawkins doesn't take a hard 7.
No.
Which I think, for me as a Christian, like hearing about the 4 horsemen and the guy that writes the book God is Dead and stuff like that, they're vilified.
Yeah.
And they're often put into a position of being cast as a little bit arrogant and a little bit foolish.
Yeah.
But Dawkins isn't arrogant enough to occupy that 7 seat.
Right.
He probably describes himself as, what, a 6?
Yeah, I think in one of his books he says a 6, and I might be inventing this, like a 6.999 something.
Okay, so he does have some hubris there.
Well, I think, to me, the big point there is crossing that line from 6.9 to 7 to me, that's a huge step, because that to me is where you're making a leap. You're making a statement that you really can't back up. And I think that's a really important part of the atheist community is, we're science-based and facts and that's why a lot of people are shocked to find out, I'm an agnostic atheist. So don't believe in a God, but I don't know,
Let's unpack that term a little bit more, because it feels like, based upon everything that we've discussed up until this point, that agnostic atheist is a contradiction.
Right.
I know that I don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I know.
Well, belief, and I think if we use the terms belief and knowledge, I think, again, we can describe those two axes. And that's why I think the Dawkins scale is neat, because he kind of took the 2 dimensions and flattened it into one kind of scale that you can kind of, I don't know, it's easier for people to...
closer towards the center, then you're moving on the x-axis. And if you're to either extreme, you're maybe a little closer to the y-axis.
Yeah, the way I would think about it is that centerpiece. That's more like the agnostic term that people were looking for before. Someone's kind of in the middle. That really means maybe their belief is a little unsure, and I think that's where. And hopefully, our friend Ty is listening to this. Shout out to him. He's actually introduced a 3rd dimension to this. So now we can look at it as like a 3D cube, and that's confidence. And I think it's important, because that's the piece that's missing. what we've talked about so far is I don't know what the binary, trinary, I don't know what the next one is, but there are really 4 cells, right? There's the, we can enumerate through them all, but you've got the Gnostic and the Theist and, all the combinations. They're really just 4. Adding, the Dawkins scale kind of added it a little bit of flexibility there, but I think the piece it's missing is that confidence. So if you're right smack dab in the middle, I mean, you're just someone who either doesn't think about it a whole lot or is maybe scared to make a call one way or the other.
Yeah.
But confidence, I think, could be another dimension.
I'm fascinated by confidence. Sorry, Ty, I haven't listened to a whole lot of your stuff, but it's okay because you won't listen to this either, right?
He's going to listen.
Confidence, I think, is one of those things that if people are being honest, that's probably a sliding scale at varying points in your life.
Oh, sure.
I would think, most Christians experience doubt. And I think either doubt is extolled as virtuous, like I'm challenging my faith and I'm going to use this as a time to engage in spiritual disciplines. And I'm going to pray and I'm going to read scripture and I'm going to, wrestle with these ideas. Right. And then the conclusion would be you get closer to God through that. And if what we're looking for is truth, like a ground truth, then that should be the natural end to the process. But there's a lot of conversation about doubt too, right? What do you do when you're doubting? And so I think there's a fear that comes with that doubt because, well, what if I'm wrong? What if it's, what if it is religious, but I've picked the wrong one? Or, what if there is no God and I've wasted all my, Sunday mornings?
Right.
So, yeah, I think the confidence thing is an interesting addition to that that dynamic. I wonder, as an agnostic atheist, how much does your confidence slide when you're having to reckon with death and your own mortality and some of the things, the hard sales pitch is, don't you fear hell, right?
Right.
So obviously that's not something I've focused on in our conversations in the past because I think that's, one, just a really crappy thing to do, and also, two, I think it misses the point of having faith anyway. I don't think it's about saving yourself from hell. That's just one of the perks in the bonus package. But how do you sort of reckon with that confidence, especially in the face of people wanting to kind of throw that at you culturally?
Yeah, so that's interesting because when I was a teenager, early 20s, I did have doubt. It took me a while to have the courage to, say the GD swear word. That was like a woo, and it was raised Catholic. Although my dad was an atheist and didn't tell us he was until we were much older, which I thought was interesting because I'm very open with it with my kids. And there was a slow shedding of the doubt. Late teens, early 20s, fell in love with the band Bad Religion, read the lyrics. It brought up things like free will and just, doubts and made me really think about it more. And I think that's the other key. How much time you spend thinking about it is, I think, proportional to your confidence. And so, I think the last vestige of doubt that I had, I was young in my career, was being willing to pick up one of those saucy books that you mentioned, The God Delusion, God is Not Great. These clearly, books with titles written to kind of shock people, right? Reading one of those on an airplane. And I think it was a couple things.
Being willing to be seen.
Be seen, yeah. And that was interesting because
I've seen pictures of people reading books on subway cars, and it's like how to live life with an incredibly large dong or something like that. And it's like, oh, okay.
Or like serial killer help books and things like that. The little fake out.
Yeah, just to see people's reaction to the cover.
No, but that was interesting. And I feel like it was my last kind of shred of doubt. And then I was like, wait a second. I think actually a big part of my reluctance to do that early was I didn't want to make people feel uncomfortable. We're on an airplane, and I'm just basically, casting information that, hey, you got one of the bad guys on the plane to he's he's an atheist and he's probably a nihilist and all that. And it just I could see it making people uncomfortable. But I remember thinking, the plane's not going to crash because I've got Dawkins in my hands or anything like that. And I think that was
because the lady next to you prayed up.
Well, of course,
she canceled out your bad juju.
But yeah, I think that was probably the last, I don't know, shred of any. And so yeah, death and loss of loved ones and all that kind of the perspective really changed because I don't know, you life on in my lifetime is precious here because I don't get an afterlife or another shot or reincarnation or any of that, right?
So you touched on the N word there.
Oh,
Not that one, the other one. Nihilism.
Yeah.
I'm just a little bit more pessimistic. I don't know, but I would think that the natural extension of true atheism, and let's not go with agnosticism, but let's say that you're that hard 7, would be a sense of nihilism, because if all things are just heading towards entropy, nothing really matters.
Nothing really matters.
And if nothing really matters, then who cares? Do what you want, party, get drunk, have lots of sex, and then die young and leave a pretty corpse.
Right. leave the corpse for someone else.
Well, you know the whole like rock star mentality, right? Like
right.
Why not just indulge in anything?
Right.
And wouldn't then the only morality just be do whatever you can to better yourself and the circumstance of the people that you value, and then screw everybody else?
Yeah. So it's interesting that the hard 7 usually from willingness to concede or talk and argue, discuss. I mean, those people, as well as the ones, I think, on both sides. Anytime you get someone who's a Gnostic theist or Gnostic atheist, I mean, they're just hard to talk to because there's really doesn't feel like there's any convincing them. Because if once you pull the Gnostic term, you're basically putting your foot in the sand. You're saying this is true. I'm not going to change my mind. You're not nothing. So it's interesting you're conflating out the nihilists because I think there are two groups, and maybe there's overlap in them often, but I don't see a necessary overlap between nihilism and Gnostic atheist. Just because I think it's just someone's just harder to talk to, just because again they're claiming to know something that they don't have proof of.
So I guess I'm sort of touching on the idea of moral frameworks now.
Yeah.
And I think Dawkins probably actually has addressed this recently and maybe caught a little bit of heat from the atheist community on this, because he has sort of lamented some of what he's ushered into his home country by helping to sort of extinguish Christianity as the default, as the main thing in culture. I think he thought early on that he was going to usher in scientific paradise, where everybody was going to suddenly be a thinking person and reason would rule the day.
Right.
And instead what happened was he just created a vacuum where the next thing waiting was there to fill in the hole. And in the case of Great Britain right now, that's a large influx of Islamic immigrants. And I don't think that he likes what's happening in British culture as a result of mass immigration. I don't think he likes the values that are coming with this new people group and this new schema of morality. And so I wonder, like, on the topic of agnostic atheists, do you think that there's one prevailing moral framework that people sort of adhere to, or do you think that's a very dynamic and individualistic headspace for people?
Yeah, I think a lot of folks that kind of follow the Four Horsemen, and Sam Harris in particular, who wrote the moral framework. I think people that are kind of read in that area probably all tend to kind of agree in the same space. But I think, again, how much thought you've put into it versus how much you've read about it and whatnot can really inform. I think for me, the kind of default atheist framework is just kind of golden rule, right? Do unto others, we're all here together. I think about it like, I think of communities and and even government. You know, how do we want to be treated? I mean, everyone's here for a short bit.
Who gets credit for that golden rule? I forget what
well,
that guy's name was.
You know, and here's the thing. So much of what's in the Bible, you know, was borrowed from other, you know, Gilgamesh and you know, other things, and even the story of Noah. You know, the taken from other tales, whether it's biblically true or not. I think the point is, you know, 2,000 years ago, I mean, there wasn't a atheist group of scientists that, you know, were talking morality. You know, religion was really the only game in town. And in fact, a lot of early philosophy and science were, you know, out of the church because they were the most educated or could read. Or so I'm not discounting, you know, the origin of and the importance of it. We needed something to get people to behave, because I mean, we came from the animal kingdom, and you know, it's not a whole lot of behaving going on there.
Yeah, I guess if you truly believe in the animal kingdom morality, it's might makes right.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But that makes sense for, you know, the dog eat dog world out there. But as we civilized and as we, you know, created larger groups of people, and this is a quote from Creating God on Hidden Brain podcast, but it got to a point where the group got so big that we needed a way to kind of play the Santa Claus card and say, look, you know, everyone needs to go and do all their work and bring it back. And if you're not doing your job, the big guy's watching you, you'll get in trouble. It kept the freeloaders from taking advantage of it. And I think that kind of thinking is what got us to the golden rule and, you know, a deity that's maybe always watching you. And now I realize
and now we're getting political because now all the freeloaders want to institute socialism again. So
that's right.
Just more proof we need God.
Well, it is interesting. Dawkins talked to Sam Harris recently and did point out again, they were talking about AI, wondering, you know, if AI and truly like an artificial intelligence, you know, will be creative, because, you know, he talks about music and art and all that. And I think you've even said too, just beautiful churches. And, you know, that's a big thing we'll be missing. I mean, I'm not a fan of the, you know, this atheist picture of the world where there's, you know, no art, no creativity. So, you know, there's still, I think, room for that. And we probably went off course, but had an interesting conversation, I think.
Absolutely. And I think there's probably a lot of meat on the bone there if we wanted to get into topics like AI. And I would like to touch a little bit more on moral frameworks as well at some point. But just to kind of bring it home here, atheist and agnostic, not interchangeable terms, but descriptors that are often paired together. And that's how it should be.
Well, it should be. I'd say saying it often is paired together is the dream. I want more people to understand that you can use them both. In fact, most people, whether they're theist or atheist, most of them probably are agnostic as well, even if they don't know the term. So yeah, it's important to kind of think about that spectrum and do think about, you know, Ty's dimension too, the confidence, because that can, you know, I could really see someone, you know, coming up with a rubric that's like, yeah, I'm like here in this 3D space, and it's like I'm more confident that I'm more confident in my lack of belief in the God, and, you know, maybe less confident in knowing there is no God and things like that, and you can really, and I think the other thing last thing I'll say really didn't point out is your atheism toward Thor or any other of the 6,000 gods that might be out there. And you know, to quote Ricky Gervais, I just took it one god further. So, you know.
That's clever. Yeah, I think that could probably be its own podcast altogether. If I'm going to put a capstone on it, one thing I would like to give Ty credit for, in my conversation with him, and I don't know if this falls on his confidence scale or if this is its own thing, and maybe he talks about it at length, or maybe this is a baked-in assumption, but a willingness to change your mind, or what would make you change your mind. Yeah. Which, you know, interplays with confidence, but also sometimes we may not be confident in something, and we're just not going to change our minds anyway.
Yeah.
And when we eventually get to the topic of free will, that's going to be me.
Yeah.
Do I have a lot of confidence in the explanation? No. People both on the theist side and the atheist side both have compelling reasons why free will is an illusion, and I just like it.
Yeah. I cathartic, right? I mean,
I just
let's
let me
kill the
close my
Let me
apps.
kill my apps. Don't kill my free will. That's a great ender, because I think that's going to be a great podcast to do with you. And
All right.
Yeah.
So stay tuned. And if you're interested in the topic of free will, let us know in the comments section. Smash the like button.
that's right.
Smash it.
Just smash it. It seems like the kids say that. I don't know.
I've seen it on YouTube, which I
Yeah.
wish they'd quit telling me that, because computer monitors are expensive.
Yeah, I know.
Can we just click it?
And the button, it's the like. We have to rebuild the like button every time somebody smashes it.
It's the worst. And then
It
you
is.
accidentally make another apply button.
Right. You know what really grinds my gears?
Thanks for listening to The Soapbox. Eric, how can people find us?
Well, conveniently, we put everything on our Linktree site. You can go to Linktree, search Soapbox Lex, and you'll find all of our socials there, plus ways to reach us, ways to engage, and some of our original content, so you can see some of the other stuff that we do.